Engine run test 1992 Sunbird Corsair 205 SL. This is a OMC Ford 302 cubic inch engine that I'm running on my own test stand. The work that I've done so far, I've installed brand new aluminum pulleys to replace the steel ones that were pretty rusted away and very wobbly. That will be in another video. Right now I've hooked up a oil pressure gauge down to where the original oil pressure sender went, which is right down here near the oil filter. Plug that in. I have disconnected my power steering pump, and power steering lines are disconnected because I don't want to actually run any kind of dirt through the power steering pump before I flush the rest of the system out. My original motor had water problems, and it sat through a winter time and actually cracked the original manifold. So these are brand new exhaust manifolds, and where they cracked is right here at the seam down here. Other little modifications that I've done, I've changed out the original water drain spigots for the block to these little guys so that I can simply just open them up quite quickly and drain any kind of the gunk out that's settled down to the very bottom of the block. For my test instrumentation, I've got a remote starter switch set up that connects up to the solenoid and to the positive side of the battery. I'll use a single jumper wire to turn on the ignition, which will plug into number 5 and number 6. All I have to do is bridge the two, and then it's technically like turning on the ignition switch. To monitor my water temperature, I don't have a gauge. I'm using the actual resistance readings for it. Right here's the water temperature sender, and I have it hooked up to a ohm meter that, since right now it's approximately 40 degrees outside, once the engine warms up and the coolant temperature warms up to approximately 100 degrees, it should drop down to 445 ohms. When the engine reaches operating temperature, which should be about 195, maybe 180, it should drop down to no less than 50 ohms. The service manual says 50 ohms plus or minus 7.5%. To monitor the charging system, I've hooked up a voltmeter to the battery. Right now the battery is fully charged. I haven't run this motor yet. On this motor, the original starter went out, and I found a Nippon Denso gear reduction starter replacement, and I've installed that on there. So that is a non-factory item, but it is supposed to be more powerful because of the gear reduction. Again, I've added another water drain on the block down here in the very front near the alternator. So alternator spigot. I've double checked to make sure I have nothing in the way of the belts, no loose cords. My firing order is correct. One thing of note, it does say 5 liter on here. It does not say 5 liter HO. This is a carbureted 2-barrel. It says right here my firing order is 154.26738, but actually it's reversed. Apparently maybe the stickers were wrong, or the factory did something weird. I don't know. But the firing order on this motor I have found is actually 137.26548. That is the high output firing order, and it also works for the 351 motor. So the way I knew this is that when I first ran this motor on the water when it was installed in the boat, as soon as I would go under load, well, first of all, I should say that I started it up. It would start and idle just fine. As soon as you went under load, it would start backfiring through the intake. So after several hours of troubleshooting every other possible problem, I found out that my firing order was incorrect. So I don't know if somebody's replaced the cam, but it doesn't appear so. So I'm going that it was actually like this from the factory, and that the sticker is incorrect. Other things that I've done for my setup, I have an old sump pump and approximately about 12 to 15 gallons of water. And what I've done is I've hooked up my sump pump to a power strip so I have immediate on-off control of the water. The sump pump will power on, sucking water through the garden hose. Garden hose goes up and it plumbs into the very back of the motor where there is the power steering intake water heat exchanger. So lake water will actually go through into the motor, power steering fluid goes in, comes out, thereby hot power steering fluid will actually give off its heat to the cold lake water. So this is the very back of the motor. I want to make sure I get full views of everything. Now when I turn on the sump pump, no water will actually get into the cylinders themselves. They will, however, fill up all the water jackets just like it would on the lake. And if I turn it on, water will actually come out the exhaust port. A lot of other videos I've seen on YouTube, people just leave the risers open. I decided to take the original setup and just for cleanliness purposes, this way I can actually recycle my water and I don't have to run it on the garden hose completely. Whatever you choose to do is up to you. So that's how I've actually set up my little test stand, just to make sure I didn't want the motor to jump around. I don't know if the person even manufactures them anymore, but my little stands to hold the motor up, I purchased through Stumpy's Fabworks. I'll say it one more time, Stumpy's Fabworks. I don't know if he's still in business or not, but the stands cost me about $125 if I'm not mistaken, and I think there are other versions available out there on the internet somewhere. The things that I've learned about this motor, actually about any boat motor in general, is how detrimental water is to your motor. I understand now why closed loop cooling systems are so popular now in the new boats. The reason why is the water in the wintertime, if you don't drain it out through the block, you still have water left in the bottom of the exhaust manifold logs down here at the very bottom, because water actually travels underneath here through this connected pipe. Like, here's where the water enters in through the front of the motor, comes down. There's actually a cap plug here on the back, and the water travels up through the riser and then comes out through the exhaust on the outside of it. The exhaust actually comes up through the center of this, whereas the water is on the outside of a jacket and then flows downwards. That way you don't actually get any water coming back in. So that should illustrate all the stuff that I have. I'm about ready to fire this thing up. For safety purposes, I've tried to make sure that all electrical's off the ground. As for my little stand, all I've done, because I don't want the torque of the motor, just in case, to actually bring it off its stand, because I mean, if it was in a car or a boat, it would have much more side-to-side stability. So I've added these 4x4 blocks. Took a little bit of time to make sure they fit correctly, put some lag bolts down, and added some side stabilizers. So probably don't need that much. Maybe it would run just fine, but I'm all in the interest of making sure that I don't want to tip the motor on its side just in case if it wants to torque hard, or if it has a miss in one of the cylinders. So I think that covers about everything. This is a Holley 2-barrel, and I'll go and probably take that off when I actually run it. It has the original electronic ignition. It does not have points, and I believe that's about it. So let's go and try and fire this thing up.